Have you noticed? The moment you start saying no, standing your ground, or simply stop nodding to every request, some people change entirely. They won't say it out loud, but you'll feel it. Their gaze turns colder, their tone dulls, and conversations grow shorter. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you're no longer easy to control. We grow up believing that if we live kindly, others will treat us kindly in return, but eventually you learn. Kindness without boundaries is exploited, and freedom without limits is threatened. The moment you start living truthfully sincere but not submissive, kind but not compliant, the world reacts. Not everyone, but some will do whatever it takes to make you doubt yourself. And yet, this too is a chance to wake up. Because those who can't control you will try to make you lose control of yourself. That is the moment to anchor yourself inward. So when they can no longer manipulate you, what will they do? 1. They shift to emotional manipulation. They don't walk out of your life immediately. They don't leave the moment you begin standing on your own. Instead, they take a step back, observe, and resort to a familiar tactic: emotional manipulation. Not through anger, but through quiet disappointment. Not through shouting, but through sad eyes and vague, loaded remarks. They stop asking for things directly. Instead, they make you give freely because you're afraid to hurt them. I once knew someone like that. Whenever I declined a last-minute request, they didn't get angry or argue. They would just sigh and say, "Just once, but I guess you're too busy to care." That sentence didn't just target my time, it pierced straight through my guilt. I began to wonder if I was becoming a cold person. I went back, gave in, and realized I had just stepped past a boundary I once drew. Not because I was wrong, but because I was emotionally led. That's how manipulation works. They don't force you to act. They plant a feeling that makes you act on their behalf. Guilt-tripping, calculated flattery, playing the victim. They choose whatever tactic fits your emotional vulnerability. And the danger is you don't see it as manipulation. You see it as care. They say, "Without you, I don't know what I'd do." It sounds like appreciation, but it's actually a chain. Or they say, "I guess I don't matter as much as your job." It sounds like a complaint, but it hides a demand that you put them first, regardless of the situation. And if you don't respond the way they want, they don't say anything. They just go quiet. They leave you alone with your guilt, and that's how they control you without ever raising their voice. Stoic philosophy doesn't teach you to distrust people, but it does teach something vital: to distinguish between emotions that arise from within and those implanted from without. Epictetus once said, "It's not events that harm us, but how we interpret them." In this case, it's not their words that change us, it's the internal manipulation that leads us to act against our own values. When you don't master your emotions, you become the easiest person to control. But when you can pause, look directly at a loaded sentence and ask, is this a request or manipulation? You reclaim agency. You don't need to get angry or confront them. A calm response like, "I understand how you feel, but this is my decision," is enough. Clear, brief, and not swept away by the emotional tide they've created. I remember another time. A family member called me late at night, asking for something urgent I couldn't do. When I said no, they replied, "You're the only one I trust. I didn't think you'd let me down." For a moment, my heart sank. Not because they were wrong, but because I feared becoming untrustworthy. But I stopped, took a breath, and said, "Trust doesn't mean I always say yes. It means I'm honest enough to say no when I must." And with that, The guilt vanished. I kept my compassion without sacrificing my self-respect. Emotional manipulation isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's simply how people survive by making you feel responsible for their feelings. But if you don't see it for what it is, you'll live in the gray zone where you do the right thing, not because you believe in it, but because you fear making someone upset. Real freedom doesn't begin with a declaration. It begins the moment you say, "I understand your feelings, but I am not responsible for them." Manipulation only works if you react. And when you stop reacting, when you don't explain, don't apologize for what isn't wrong, don't bend over backwards to keep the peace, you break the cycle. Not with conflict, but with unshakable calm. That's the first lesson. When they can't control you with reason or power, they'll choose the shortcut emotion. But you only lose your way if you let them lead. If you walk with the light of awareness, you won't get lost in the shadows others create. 2. They play the victim. When someone can't make you do what they want, they don't always argue or threaten. Sometimes they go softer, they turn themselves into the wounded one. They tell the story in a way that makes you the hurter, and them the unwilling victim. It's a calculated move, not loud like rage, but sharp and quiet, like a blade that cuts from within. And the most dangerous part is, it doesn't make you angry, it makes you feel guilty. I once had a coworker like that. When they crossed boundaries texting after hours, asking for help beyond the job description, I gently said, "I need clear boundaries to keep balance in my life." A few hours later, I heard from someone else that I was not a team player, cold, too rigid. And that person, they didn't badmouth me directly. They just recounted everything with a sorrowful voice, teary eyes, and said they were just trying, but felt hurt. When someone can't control your behavior, they try to control how others perceive you. And the most effective way? They dress themselves in the robes of the offended. They share half the truth, the part where they felt pain, and hide the rest, the part where they crossed your line. Then they wait. Wait for you to hear the story, feel guilt, and come back doing what they wanted from the start. The trap lies here. The more you try to explain, to set the record straight, the deeper you fall into the villain role they've written for you. They don't need to fight. They just need you to react. Because when you react, the story becomes messy. And outsiders, only seeing the surface, will ask, if he's not guilty, why is he trying so hard to defend himself? So what do you do when facing someone who often plays the victim? First, understand, this isn't a tale of good versus evil. It's about control. Their shift from causing pain to claiming pain isn't pure emotion, it's strategy. It's designed to soften you, make you back down, and alter your behavior away from your true values. Stoicism teaches us something critical in such moments. Never let someone else's emotions dictate your actions. Epictetus said, "The wise are not ruled by others' feelings. Only the weak are shaken by words." That doesn't mean being heartless. It means distinguishing true pain from emotional theater designed to manipulate. I recall another time when I stepped down from a volunteer group due to burnout. One member posted a vague message on social media. Sometimes, people leave just when you need them most. No names, no tags, but enough for others to message me, asking what was going on. I responded simply, "I stepped back for personal reasons, that's all." I didn't justify, I didn't attack. I let time and consistency speak. Eventually, that person lost influence, and I continued contributing in ways aligned with my own limits. The issue with those who play the victim is that they don't need you to be wrong, they just need you to feel wrong. They use feelings as proof. tears as arguments, but truth isn't found in theatrics. It lives in intentional, steady action. And if you don't waver, they retreat because they can't manipulate someone who doesn't respond. So, when you feel cornered into explaining because someone's sad, disappointed, or using sweet but targeted words to express pain, pause and ask, am I helping or being led? You have no duty to make someone feel better if it means sacrificing your self-respect, principles, and inner peace. Because in the end, those who truly understand you won't need you to play the good guy all the time. And those who need you to feel guilty just to keep you close, they don't want a companion. They want a puppet. Don't be the second. 3. They try to isolate you. When someone can't dominate you, they won't always confront you directly. They use a quieter tactic. They work behind the scenes. Not to bring you down instantly, but to slowly pull others out of your orbit. They don't need to break you. They just need to leave you standing alone. I once faced this in a highly competitive workplace. In the beginning, everyone shared freely, supported one another, and gave credit where due. But as I began declining vague favors, upholding personal boundaries, and avoiding clique gossip, I noticed the shift. People who once felt close became distant. Conversations happened, but I was no longer mentioned. I wasn't openly criticized. I was quietly excluded. And then it hit me. Someone was telling my story, but not to me. Isolation is a long game. They don't push you out. They turn the room until you feel unnecessary. They whisper, "Not sure if he's trustworthy," or "He seems to have issues lately." They say it gently, as if concerned, not hostile. But the result is the same. You feel misplaced in a group you once belonged to. And when you feel alone, you become fragile. And when you're fragile, you're easier to guide. That's the goal. Isolation isn't always obvious. It doesn't appear as threats. It hides in avoided glances, unanswered messages, and invitations that never come. If you're not alert, you'll think you're the problem. You'll start adjusting, lowering your standards, becoming more agreeable, hoping you'll be accepted again. But you're walking into the very trap they've set, using loneliness to push you back into the mold they can control. Stoicism reminds us there's nothing more fearful than being cut off from the group unless you're strong enough not to need it. Seneca once wrote, "Stay close to those who make you better. Stay away from those who make you doubt your worth." And in moments like this, that advice becomes survival. Because if you're around people who subtly make you feel wrong for being yourself, you're not among friends, you're under silent control. I once responded to isolation by trying to win people back, until I realized that real trust doesn't demand you change who you are. People who need you to compromise every principle to gain their approval never truly accept you. So I did the opposite. I stopped chasing, stopped explaining, stopped trying to fit in. I focused on the relationships that remained fewer but genuine. I poured energy into my work, into values I believe in, and let time reveal the truth. A year later, the one who manipulated everyone was no longer at the company. No one pushed them out. They fell away because those they isolated no longer needed them to feel whole. And that's what you must remember. Those who truly know you won't turn away because of whispers. Real connections won't collapse under rumors. And those who leave easily were never really there. Isolation only works when fear of being alone leads you. But if you can stand alone in truth, you'll find you are never truly alone. The ones who remain, though few, are enough. Don't cling to those who walk away when you begin living true to yourself. Anyone who vanishes at your strength would never stay for your weakness, and you don't need to get smaller to keep anyone. 4. They wait for you to fail. Some people don't need to say they don't believe in you. Their silence says it for them. They nod when you share a dream, smile when you talk about future plans, even say, "I'm happy for you." But deep down, they don't expect your success. They're waiting for the moment you stumble. They're not walking beside you to lift you up. They stand behind you to see how far you can go without needing them. I once had a friend like that. Every time I made a breakthrough in my career, they responded with a flat tone, no congratulations, no questions. But when I hit a setback, once rejected for a project, once criticized in public, they were the first to message me. Not to check in, but to say, "I thought from the start it was a bit risky." It sounded like concern, but it was really just a way to validate their quiet belief that I would fail, and now they were right. This is painful but true. Some people don't want you to lose, but they also don't want you to win. Your success becomes a mirror reflecting what they never dared to do, what they once gave up, or dreams they never had the courage to chase. When you move forward, you force them to confront their own stillness, and that unsettles them. So they don't attack you. They just wait. Wait for you to slip, wait for you to fail, wait for you to prove that taking risks was a mistake. It's a quiet kind of patience, not born of love, but of hope that you'll fall back down to the ground where they still stand. And when you do stumble, they'll be the first to say, "I knew it." They won't strike you with a blow. They'll trip you with feigned regret as if they care about you more than you care about yourself. But the truth is, they don't want you to rise stronger. They want you to learn one lesson, that you should go back to being safe, predictable, agreeable, unambitious. Stoic philosophy teaches us that success is not a contest against others, but a commitment to oneself. Epictetus once said, "Don't waste energy proving them wrong. Use it to do the work." And that is how you face those waiting for your collapse. You don't argue, don't react, don't seek to be understood. You let your actions speak. You let the outcome respond. I remember clearly the first time a personal project I had nurtured for months was brutally rejected. The ones who stayed silent through all my preparation suddenly appeared with advice like, "Next time, just stick to what everyone else is doing." But instead of listening, I reviewed the failure, learned from it, and tried again. 3 months later, I succeeded with a refined version of the same idea. And the funny thing was, they vanished. No congratulations, not a word of acknowledgement, because now, the silence wasn't dismissal, it was discomfort. Remember, the ones waiting for your failure are often not enemies. They can be co-workers, friends, even family. The ones who wear a neutral smile but carry a hidden list of things they hope you'll never achieve. And the only thing that silences them forever is your refusal to stop moving forward despite their indifference. No shouting needed, no proving, just keep going, because nothing unsettles them more than watching someone they doubted actually do it. And nothing brings you more peace than no longer trying to please those who only hope you'll fall. Don't let the expectations of your failure block your path. Keep walking and let them strain their necks, waiting for a fall that never comes. 5. They imitate you. At first, you think it's just coincidence. You change your lifestyle, they suddenly start eating healthy too. You post a quote on philosophy, they share something similar the next day. You launch a new project, and not long after, they start something nearly identical, with a presentation strikingly close to yours. But over time, you begin to see they're not just inspired, they're copying. And what bothers you isn't fear of losing your uniqueness, but that they never once admit it. I once worked with a colleague like that. At first, I was glad to have someone walking in the same direction, but then I noticed. Whenever I shared an idea in a private meeting, that same person would present it again in a larger setting with no mention of where it came from. I stayed silent at first. I told myself, it's okay, as long as the work moves forward. But when it kept happening, I realized this wasn't learning. It was calculated appropriation, quiet and intentional. People like that don't necessarily dislike you. Sometimes they admire you so much they want to become you, but instead of becoming the best version of themselves, they settle for a temporary replica of you. And what hurts isn't the imitation itself, but that they're forfeiting their own chance at real growth. They're not competing anymore, they're duplicating. They're not creating, they're observing, taking notes, and repeating. But what they fail to understand is this. What you're living doesn't come from a formula. It comes from experience, from choice, from your own failures and hard-earned lessons. They can borrow how you speak, how you present, or even mimic your pace, but they can't copy the soul behind it. Stoic philosophy doesn't reject learning from others, but it always emphasizes this. Character, not appearance, is what truly defines a person. Seneca once wrote, "We may be influenced by the great, but we must not lose ourselves in them." And that's the difference between being inspired and losing your identity. I remember one time when I decided to shift the direction of my career, a bold step no one in our group had dared to take. 3 weeks later, that person made a coincidental move in the same direction with eerily similar reasoning. I didn't get angry, I just felt sad. Not because I was copied, but because I witnessed someone choosing to live a second-hand life instead of a first-hand one. Then, one day, I changed everything. My working style, my positioning, my entire approach. That person was lost. They had nothing left to mimic. Why? Because you can follow someone's footsteps, but you'll never catch someone who keeps moving forward on a path only they can walk. Imitation may get you started, but it will never keep you going. So what do you do with those who copy you? Don't worry. Don't get bitter. Don't stop to look at what they're building from your scraps. Keep evolving. Move so quickly that those trailing behind will have no choice but to either become themselves or stay forever in your shadow. Because ultimately, imitators always arrive late, and the pioneer never needs to look back to prove it. You don't need to prove you're the original, you just need to keep becoming a better version of yourself. That's the one thing they'll never be able to duplicate. 6. They plant doubt within you. Resistance doesn't always come in the form of criticism. Sometimes it arrives as a harmless question, spoken lightly. Are you sure? Is this really the right time? Or, I just care about you, don't take too many risks. It doesn't hurt you immediately, but it plants a tiny seed in your mind, a seed of doubt. And if you're not grounded, that seed grows into a dark forest where you lose the sound of your inner voice. I remember the first time I decided to leave a stable job to start something on my own. The first reactions from a few close acquaintances weren't congratulations or encouragement. Instead, they squinted, tilted their heads, and said, "Have you really thought this through? Isn't it a bit reckless to quit now?" It sounded like concern, but carried an unspoken message. I don't think you're capable. And what unsettled me wasn't their words, it was the feeling that I started to believe them. That's how they regain power when they can no longer control you with orders. They don't stop you from walking forward, they just make you walk slower. They make you second-guess every step. No longer trusting your instincts, you start seeking approval from others. And in that dependency, you step out of your freedom and return to the safe ground you once fought to leave. Those who sow doubt often don't mean harm. They might believe they're protecting you from failure, from risk, from pain. But the problem is, They don't live your life. They don't feel that burning desire inside you each night as you lie awake wondering if you're living your potential. And even if they don't mean to extinguish that light, every word of doubt dims it a little. Stoicism reminds us, confidence doesn't come from others agreeing with you, it comes from knowing who you are and why you do what you do. Epictetus once wrote, "No one can make you feel small unless you hand them the power." And sometimes, that power isn't handed through action but through a hesitant glance, a wavering tone, the moment you begin asking permission for what you should simply decide. I fell into that trap. After hearing too many questions, I began doubting every idea I had. I'd write something, then delete it. I'd plan something, then delay it. Every step came with a whisper in my mind. Will someone think this is too impulsive? Then one day I realized I was living a censored version of myself, not by others, but by the fear they planted in me. And from that moment on, I chose silence in the face of hesitation. No rebuttals, no explanations, no attempts to prove anything. I just kept going. Every step built on reason, experience, and quiet resolve. I learned to take full responsibility for my choices, both when they succeeded and when they failed. Because only when you're willing to own the consequences do you truly own the decision. They'll keep asking, "Are you sure?" And you'll smile, not loudly, not defiantly, but calmly, and say, "I'm clear enough within myself not to need certainty from anyone else." Because in the end, what moves you forward isn't applause from the crowd. It's the silence inside when you know you're no longer living under someone else's doubt, but by the faith you've built on your own. And no one can plant uncertainty in a place already filled with trust. 7. They rewrite the story about you. Not everyone confronts you head-on. Some choose a more effective tactic. They retell your story in a version you would never agree to write. They don't need to name you, don't need to accuse you outright, don't even need to be specific. They just plant a few seeds of doubt, add a few vague details, and let others imagine the rest. I once experienced this after stepping down from a long-term project team. My reason was simple. I was exhausted and needed to step back to stay balanced. I left quietly, politely, without a single complaint. But not long after, I began to sense a shift. People who once greeted me now avoided eye contact. A close collaborator messaged a cryptic line. "I didn't think you'd choose to leave at a time like this." I had never spoken ill of anyone, but somehow, someone had spoken something about me. The story was no longer that I stepped away for health. It became that I walked out when the group was struggling. No one spoke to me directly, but I was recast through a different lens, one where every action was distorted by the narrator's agenda. This is what's most unnerving when others can't control you. They stop trying to change you. They try to change your reputation. If they can't bend you to their will, they want others to think you're the problem. They don't need outright lies, just a touch of tone, a shade of emotion, a few missing facts, and the image of you begins to warp. What makes this game effective is your silence. The less you respond, the more room they have to paint things that never happened. But if you do respond, they gain new proof. "See, I wasn't wrong. Look how defensive he got." So you're cornered, speak up and look guilty, stay quiet and seem suspicious. And suddenly, you're trapped in a battle not to defend the truth, but to reclaim a version of yourself someone else distorted before you had the chance to speak. Stoic philosophy doesn't teach us to chase public opinion just to reclaim our voice. It teaches us to live rightly enough that no explanation is needed. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." People may assign many labels to you, but no one can steal the truth you live each day unless you abandon it in the effort to defend something beyond your control. I chose not to fight back. No status updates, no confrontations. I simply kept showing up kind, punctual, consistent, and over time, those who had been influenced by the false version began to notice. I didn't match the rumor. The gap between the tale and my actual presence was too obvious. Some quietly returned. Others never mentioned it again. But I was at peace because I knew I hadn't betrayed myself just to correct what others had fabricated. You can't stop others from writing the story they want to tell, but you can live a life where the real story eventually reveals itself regardless of the distortions. Because truth doesn't need to be shouted, it only needs to be lived fully, every day. If someone is describing you with words that don't belong to you, don't respond the way they hope. Keep walking, stay steady, and let time be the final editor of every dishonest version. What they build with words, you will undo with your life. 8. They provoke you to lose control. When they can't make you obey. When they see you no longer react the way they expect, they don't retreat. They switch to one final tactic. They provoke you. They no longer want to control your behavior. They want to control your reaction. They provoke not to win the argument, but to make you lose yourself. I once had a colleague who always maintained a calm, polite exterior. But every time I presented a differing viewpoint, he had a way of emphasizing his words just enough to irritate without breaking the rules. One time, after I shared a new idea, he smiled, nodded, and said, "I get it, this is how people think before they've had much real-world experience." Not loud, not overtly aggressive, but every word was crafted like a subtle stab, quiet, calculated. And I almost fell for it. I wanted to respond immediately, to defend myself instantly, to protect my ego on the spot. But at that very moment, I remembered something Marcus Aurelius once wrote. The strongest person is the one who does not become what their enemy wants them to be. They want you to lose your cool. They want you to lash out. They want you to erupt in front of others. Because the moment you lose control, they can erase all the calm you've maintained. And when you do react, when you yell, slam the table, glare, they don't need to win the point. They've already won the frame. This is their game. Stir your rawest emotions, then sit back and play the civilized one. They act surprised at your reaction, as if they don't know what triggered it. I was just giving feedback. Why so sensitive? That's the signature line of those who back you into a corner and feign innocence. And if you're not careful, you'll spend the rest of the conversation defending a burst of anger you never meant to release. Stoicism reminds us that self-control is the pinnacle of inner strength. You don't need to win every exchange. You only need to keep others from holding the keys to your emotions. When someone tries to push you to the edge, step back. When they use words to hook into your pride, look at them as someone drowning in their own chaos and don't jump in with them. Once when I was publicly jabbed during a meeting, instead of firing back, I smiled and said, "I can tell you're really invested in this." Not sarcastic, not passive, just enough to break the rhythm of provocation and bring the tone back to calm. And you know what? He had nothing left to say. Because someone trying to control you with emotion doesn't know what to do when you don't bring emotion to the table. They only have power when you lose yours. So don't grant them that privilege. Stay calm, keep distance, hold your center like a still lake where no stone can stir a wave. And when you master non-reaction, you'll realize what you preserve isn't just composure, it's power. I believe freedom doesn't come from the absence of interference in your life, but from the absence of anyone's ability to manipulate your reaction. Some people enter our lives not to walk alongside us, but to test how far we'll bend for their presence. They don't carry knives. They use words, silence, glances, and performance to sway our emotions, make us doubt ourselves, and constantly adjust just to be accepted. But the moment you stop and ask, is this coming from truth or from manipulation? You reclaim your agency. Not everyone who feels hurt by us is truly wounded. Not everyone who misrepresents us deserves a confrontation, and not everyone who angers us is worthy of the energy we give away. Each time we remain silent, not out of fear, but out of clarity over what deserves a response and what should simply pass, we come closer to a version of ourselves that is steady, discerning, and unshakable. And that is true freedom. If you found value in what I shared today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next reflection. And if there's just one thing you carry with you from this video, let it be this. Others may try to control you in every way they can, but no one can command a mind that has learned to stand on its own. See you in the next video.